Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and we ask that your name be glorified in all that we do. And as we continue through now the second half of the 24th week of Ordinary Time, on this special feast day of St. Matthew the Apostle, and we ask that we may have the zeal he had so that we can glorify your name in our time today. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, as you heard, today is the feast day of St. Matthew the Apostle. And, early in the week, I mentioned something I thought was kind of important for us to realize, is when I talked about Timothy, who I said was like basically the first generation of bishops, because he wasn't an apostle, and the apostles with the community chose the bishops. But Matthew was an apostle, and so when we look at Matthew, we look at someone who, to be an apostle, was chosen by Jesus. And so we see that special role he had, but then we ask the question, if we were the ones doing the choosing, which happens actually in a sense with the bishops, we'll talk about that in a minute, you would have something a little bit different, because we might turn around and say, why are you are you calling a tax collector? And realize this is nothing against tax collectors or people who work for whatever tax agency in your country, and here in the United States, the IRS. But remember, a tax collector, as in Matthew, collected taxes for the occupying force, because at the time they were in, actually, I wasn't there, Roman occupied Judah. And so therefore, the main focus from a lot of people, including the other apostle Simon the Zealot, was to eliminate Roman occupation. And it was believed, of course, that Jesus was going to come and run the Romans out of Judah, which eventually people saw there was no way that could happen. And so we see this man who was considered a traitor to his nation and his faith, and he's the one who Jesus calls. So that's a powerful message that we look at. And we understand that when Jesus called someone, we may not have agreed if we were there. Why are you choosing this traitor? And that's the reason why tax collectors were often considered to be great sinners, because they were considered betrayers to their faith. And so here he was a tax collector, meaning he was working for the Romans. I guess if we would look at it in a different way, well, actually, we can look at it this way today. Imagine Jesus is walking in through the United States looking for apostles, and they're saying, I don't know if this is true, but this seems to be coming from the news of our government, that there are secret police forces of the Chinese that are keeping eyes on Chinese citizens. Now, I happen to be here in Cambridge, and of course there are a lot of Asians that go to school at Harvard and BU and some of the other schools. So if any of them are Chinese, we may assume, and in fact it's happened, but we may assume that there could be this Chinese police force somewhere in the area. Recently, a few weeks ago, there was a man who has been arrested and charged by U.S. federal forces of being a spy for the Chinese. So it could all be part of that. And imagine Jesus coming along and saying, okay, this Chinese national I'm choosing as one of my apostles. And we turn around and say, whoa, wait a minute. This guy is a spy for a force that could be working against us, but they're definitely working against people who are living here in the United States who are Chinese nationals. Why are you choosing him? And Jesus would have his reason. It's not exactly the same analogy, but it's close enough, because people would say, wait, this guy is raising money, our money, for the Romans, and we're not Roman. Why are you allowing this? So we can see how this would be a powerful question that people would say, why did you choose him? And then, of course, Simon the Zealot was the exact opposite. He worked against the Romans, trying to even, not necessarily he did it, but his party was involved in killing people who were connected to the Romans. So, though it's always well known that one of the greatest miracles Jesus ever did was to get those two to sit down to supper, because they were two people from two opposite sides of a political message. Even stronger than the most leftist in one party in the United States and the most rightist in the other party in the United States, even stronger than that. So we have Jesus choosing this man who many people considered a traitor. And so that question is why? Now later, when people chose bishops, and communities chose bishops to a point, now it's actually a group of bishops will choose bishops, and George Weigel actually mentioned in an interview I did with him, where he said, no, that's got to stop. You've got to have, and Pope Francis is doing that. He's expanding the dicastery on bishops. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony in Alston.
Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WEZE 590 AM and WEZEradio.com at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us on our parish website, ST for StAnthonyAlston.org. That's StAnthonyAlston.org. And let others know where they can find us and spread the word and subscribe to our podcast.
We're back. And so we're talking about this powerful message of Jesus choosing a tax collector. One of the things we're doing here at St. Anthony Parish is we're praying that our church, that the Lord will lead to our church those people he wants to be here. That's a little bit different than the all are welcome message. And, all are welcome. There were a lot of churches in the area that, of all different denominations that are of the all are welcome message. Probably one of the most famous is right across the street from Harvard University across Mass Ave. And it's a Unitarian Universalist church in Harvard Square. I don't know if it's connected to Harvard, Unitarian Universalist Church, right now going under some construction, but they've always had the all are welcome message. Well, what we're saying is we welcome who the Lord sends to our parish. And I think that's the important part that we want to pray for, is not that we open our church to whomever, we open our church to whomever the Lord sends to us. And you might say, well, what's the difference? Well, there actually is a big difference, because we can say, when you turn around and say all are welcome, first of all, if you take the word as it means, then you have to do exactly what it says. All are welcome, which is not there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that that's what that means. But what we're saying is, Lord, send us the people who you want to receive our message here at the church. Let us be a welcoming parish to the people who you choose. And you can see a classic example of this in Jesus and Matthew the tax collector. Because you can imagine how many people would say, well, Jesus, we wanted to welcome him, but we didn't think you'd mean a tax collector for the Romans. We didn't think you'd mean a betrayer. We didn't think you'd mean someone who would turn who would be raising our money and giving it to the Romans. We thought you'd be having someone more in accordance with what we want to think. Do you see? So when you throw that challenge out, then you ask the Lord to respond to that challenge, and he will. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, and we can see that very powerfully with the message of Saint Matthew. And we see that in a lot of the people who Jesus called to be his followers. Even if you go back to Saint Paul, granted this is the feast day of Saint Matthew, but we can look at Saint Paul for a minute. And what was it that Ananias said to the Lord when he heard the Lord telling him to welcome St. Paul? Lord, do you know what this man has been doing? Do you know who he is? Yes, indeed, I do. So it would be kind of like somewhere along the line, someone who absolutely hated the Catholic Church was very public about it, and all of a sudden we see him coming into the Catholic Church wanting to be a Catholic. We go, whoa, Lord, do you know who this is? And really interesting thing to look at when we're praying for things like that. And that's the message of Matthew. Jesus chose Matthew, and that was the whole thing. People going, you really sure who this is? And that's what our church is all about. It's not so much, would you like to come to our church? Would you like to encounter Jesus? It's like, is Jesus sending you to our church? And is he sending you for us to be welcoming you? And you might be a great challenge to come to this church, but if the Lord sent you, we have to accept that challenge, as you saw in Matthew the tax collector, as you saw in St. Paul. And that goes for anyone within the sound of my voice, as that saying goes. If you're in the Boston area and you're looking for a place to go to church and you want to come to St. Anthony's Catholic Church, you're welcome to do so. And that's what we're doing. Anyway, have yourself a blessed day. We will be back for our final morning program tomorrow. In the meantime, have a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation to the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.